Anybody out in the public that wishes to speak on any of these items?
Craig Schultz.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Odd to be in this spot. I'm used to being in that spot, listening to what everybody else has to say. And I'm glad you asked that question. And the money would be used to improve accessibility at Searle Park. All the money would go towards any construction or work that needs to be done at the park, and wouldn't go towards planning or staff time. We're in the process of working on accessibility at all of our parks. And Searle Park's one of 3 parks that we operate in Hemet. We operate 84 parks, 13 rec centers throughout our district, which stretches from French Valley up to Winchester, part of Menifee, Hemet, San Jacinto, Val Vista, and 1 center in Owanga. But we have 3 parks specifically that are in Hemet, in Searle Park, Bill Gray Park, and Diamond Valley Lake Park. Searle Park is used for ball games, used for classes, a lot of exercise classes there. And like the young lady said, we're using it to improve the accessibility of the park. So, and I want to say Dean Wetter, our general manager, apologizes he couldn't be here tonight. Said you have to see me. Sorry about that. But Dean and our board appreciate any consideration for these funds. And I'll answer any more questions you may have.
Thank you for the clarification and information. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, may I have a motion?
I would just like to thank the staff for the preparation that went into our ad hoc committee. We were both provided this very complete binder that not only had the information that we needed to address for the applications, but it had a historical profile that we could look back at previous allocations and requests. And neither one of the staff members have that responsibility as anything other than a collateral duty. And Kaylee, is it? Kalina? Yeah, and she picked it up midstream and did a really good job. So thank you to the staff for their work in doing this on a collateral basis.
We've had a lot of recent turnover with retirements, and Tiffany and Kalina have really stepped up to the plate and taken on duties that aren't normally theirs and had to learn the program, and it shows in what they've provided for you that they're doing a great job, and I appreciate them in my department.
Much appreciated.
Okay. And with that, could I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the ad hoc committee's recommendations for the CDBG funding.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Please vote. Don't do that yet. It's stuck. Okay.
She had already done it, and it was a 4-1, and I'm assuming you meant to make it a 5-0. So
That's correct. So
excellent. So if you just say the results were 5-0.
the results were 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to item number 14, tree trimming operation report by Acting City Manager Lopez.
Good evening again. By way of background, I want to provide some more information on this item. At the Mayor and City Council meeting of November 13, 2018, the City Council directed staff to look into the tree trimming operation and provide information related to contracting options. At the Mayor and City Council meeting of January 8, 2019, the City Council directed staff to look into the tree trimming practices of neighboring cities. And so what I wanted to do tonight is go over that presentation that we had on January 8th, refresh everybody about the conversation we had back then, and then also provide the updates as it relates to the items that the Council directed staff to look into. So again, forestry, what are we talking about here? This covers the maintenance and operation activities related to trees and shrubs in or on the public right-of-way. And so part of that comprehensive program includes forestry planning, inventorying species and condition, planting, pruning, and of course removal of dead, diseased, and hazardous trees. So Hemet's program is overseen by the refuse superintendent. Underneath him, he's got a supervisor, and then the staff related to the tree trimming operation, 6 FTEs, 3 crews of 2. Some of the highlights over the course of 1 year from October 2017 to October 2018. Some of the highlights include 78 trees that were planted, 326 trees that were stumped, and 1,421 trees that were trimmed during that time. The city's most recent estimate shows approximately 24,000 trees that are the city's responsibility. So as you'll recall, the tree trimming program is covered through multiple different funds. As you'll recall from our earlier budget conversation, we've got other funds, pre-218 district, assessment district, that contributes to the portion of that cost, as well as post-218 assessment districts, and a general fund component of approximately $151,898. And you can see that personnel-wise, 58% of the budget is allocated for personnel. An additional amount is for maintenance and operations, and some internal service funds of liability fleet of about 33%, or $343,820, for a total program cost of just over $1 million. So Hemet's program is not just trimming trees. There are other duties that are assigned for the program. Approximately 85% of the work that they do is for tree trimming. The balance, 15%, is spent installing banners and other types of special requests as needed throughout the community. The city currently does use a contractor to trim approximately 1,000 palms at a cost of $40,000 per fiscal year. So now I'll get into some of the advantages and disadvantages of the different staffing models. So starting on the left-hand column, some of the advantages with respect to in-house staffing. There are ties to the community. There's institutional knowledge. They can respond quickly to other tasks as needed. They are accountable to the director. No administrative time is needed to oversee a contract, and can respond to emergencies more quickly. I'll clarify that the administrative time, there is some administrative time necessary to oversee the contract for the trimming of the palm, so that's not entirely the case in our situation. Some of the in-house staff disadvantages: they may only have limited experience of urban forest management. Investments must be made in equipment and maintenance, which can be very, very costly. This was actually the item that caused this discussion as it related to the purchase of some trucks to continue on the operation, having it in-house. The agency should invest time and funding for obtaining and maintaining certifications, licenses, and other training as needed. The removal from positions if performance is substandard can be difficult. Staff is paid irrespective of quantity, quality, or efficiency of work. The city is responsible for damage caused by workers, and the city is responsible for on-the-job injuries and workers' compensation associated with that. So now let's talk about contracted services and the advantages associated with that service model. Typically experienced and knowledgeable on a wide array of topics, contractors can provide a high level of knowledge on specific areas, including hazard tree identification, technical specification, and tree preservation. They can be released from service more easily, so if a contractor isn't performing its obligation as the city sees fit, they can more easily be terminated. They come fully equipped with the necessary tools to tackle the job. All certifications, licenses, and continuing education are already in place and provided by the contractor. Contractors are paid when work performed is to the satisfaction of the agency, and labor is available during peak demands and can staff up or down based on availability of funds, As we talked about earlier today with the budget discussion, this is something that is a little bit easier when you have the contracting service model, because you can up staff or down staff based on revenue that's being received by the city. Some of the disadvantages associated with contracting: contract assignment may limit flexibility in job assignment. So as we talked about, when we have staff internally that does the job, we can allocate them on different projects as needed. If used for an extended period of time, they can be more expensive in the long run. Administrative oversight of contract is required. And finally, they may not respond to emergency as quickly as in-house crews can. And I think this was primarily exemplified over the course of the last couple months when we've had significant rain. There was an opportunity to have staff allocated and cover some of the issues that we had during that time. So again, some more advantages. The contractor furnishes all tools, equipment, maintenance, and repair. Downtime for repair or maintenance is not the responsibility of the agency. And I'll talk about this just briefly. As a result of the requirements set forth by AQMD, the equipment that we currently have is no longer going to be available to use in 2020. And so again, there are some capital costs associated with the purchase of those vehicles that abide by air quality standards. Insurance and workers' compensation is the responsibility of the contractor, and liability for damage to private and public property is the responsibility of the contractor. So based on the direction given on January 8th, 2019, I reached out to a number of agencies, some that were adjacent to us and some that had similar populations to the city of Hemet. Those agencies were the city of Eastvale, Jurupa Valley, Rialto, Menifee, Temecula, San Jacinto, and Lake Elsinore. I've included the population for those communities in the middle column. And then finally, the last column summarizes their operation. In Eastvale, 90% of the work is performed by contractors. 10% is in-house, primarily for emergency work. In Jurupa Valley, again, the same type of service model. 90% has been done by contractors. 10% is done in-house, and again, primarily emergency work. In Rialto, again, approximately 90% of it is contract. 10% is in-house. The in-house personnel in Rialto directs the contractor work and makes sure that the work associated with what they do is what the city wants them to do. In Menifee, 90% is contracted out. Staff does do debris cleanup, and Public Works will assist on occasion. They mentioned that the debris cleanup that was done by the internal staff was on a rare occasion, so it wasn't something that happened consistently. In Temecula, approximately 90 to 95% is done by contractors, and 5 to 10% is done in-house. In San Jacinto, 95% is done by contract individuals, 5% as rare occasions arise. And then finally, in Lake Elsinore, 100% of their operation is contracted out. So next steps for the council, 2 items that we will need direction on. One, the first one, if the council wishes, is to maintain the status quo and carry on the existing operation. Or 2, explore the costs and benefits of contracting out. So what we will need and require as a result of that direction is we will ask direction to meet and confer with bargaining groups and negotiate in good faith with one another on matters that are within the scope of representation. And then 2, develop the RFP that will be given to bargaining groups for input and then make public. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, and thank you for that comprehensive report so far. I want to ask if there's anybody, any members of the public that wish to speak on this item. Nope. None said. How about council? Does council have any questions for Mr. Lopez? None here. Hearing none. Okay.
My question is, have we, as far as we have the meet and confer as an option and develop an RFP, have staff gone through and scrutinized all of their activity and cut everything possible that they feel that they have cut? You know, there's always something else that we can cut, right? I mean, you think that, or I know that at some point there's going to be a breaking point,
So this,
whether it's, you know, grants to obtain or different programs. I just don't know what has been done at the staff level to get to this point.
sure, so ultimately this has been at the direction of the council, so we've explored it. We haven't been asked to do that. I'm sure that over the course of the years, as other departments have had their budgets reduced, that the same is true for the tree trimming operation. I will mention that this isn't a decision based on actually contracting out the operation. This is strictly on the preliminary side of gathering information, so that at the appropriate time, that information will be brought back to the council, and a determination would be made on what the council desires to do at that point. So this is just to develop an RFP, potentially get some costs back, and figure out what that would be from the contractor's perspective.
Councilmember Frupa?
I'm trying to find the page. When you were talking with other cities and the percentage times, did this discussion come up about those that use 10 to 15 or 5 to 10% of time in doing other duties, what exactly that was? I mean, emergency, like the tree fell down over by your home. I mean, things like that have to be responded to immediately, and we do have a very active banner program and putting up, you know, Christmas lights and things like that. Is that basically what staff in the other cities do?
Yeah, so it was kind of a broad scope of work that those individuals did. So they were typically characterized as maintenance workers, and so they could essentially do a lot of different things. And so they weren't primarily plugged into a certain operation. They were just broad positions that could essentially do whatever it is that they needed to do to get the job done.
Okay. Thank you. Another comparison maybe on this chart we could see is you added in the number of trees that we're responsible for. If you, I mean, just to be in perspective with what they're doing, since we're a city of trees, is that what we're called? We are.
Yeah, we are.
Tree City, USA.
Tree City, USA. Mm-hmm. Just comparing.
One of many.
Sure.
I had a question on your survey of the 7 other cities, and maybe you didn't get into this deep of a discussion with them. I'm curious to know if you can share with us, of those 7 cities, if any of them had their own city service and transitioned to more contract service, or if they've been contracted service all along from the beginning.
A great question. I can tell you that Eastvale and Harupa Valley, because they are newer communities, they've made the decision to go with contracting just because of the fact that the cost of adding new employees on the city's payroll is just far greater than what they wanted to encounter. So they've made that decision to do that. I can say that in a couple of these individuals that I've talked to with respect to these agencies, there's been a desire from their experience to move away from having in-house staff do it because of the liability associated with that operation. So it's been over the course of some time that those cities have decided to go by way of contracting because of the liability associated with that. And that was a common theme, I'd say, in about 3 of them, that's what they've seen in their experience through the course of the cities that they've worked for.
And just kind of a follow-up to that, did you get any sense of their degree of satisfaction with the contract work that they're getting?
Yeah, actually, I think it was Eastvale that had just recently awarded a contract, and I didn't hear any complaints about the issues that they were having, or any issues that they were having. Typically, they did mention that there was an average cycle that they had in terms of the number of years that every single tree would be trimmed throughout the city, and they seem to be pleased with that operation.
Thank you.
Kind of a question, maybe more of a comment. since we're in the middle of the budget, and looking at the budget, and we're looking at ways that we have to reduce costs, as part of this, was it taken into account that if we were to contract out, that would also reduce our workers' comp liability because it's based off of payroll?
So that would be something that we would explore, but we didn't get into that. We didn't want to get ahead of ourselves without council providing that direction. So we didn't delve into that yet, but we could as we moved along in the process.
I mean, I'm just looking at it from a liability standpoint is that, and I'm not advocating right now at all for people losing their jobs. However, we have a budget that we have to look at and constraints, and there's more to just paying benefits, and then the cost of a contract. It's very dynamic.
And I think like comparing the number of trees and then maybe with the contract price of these cities, that might help us, comparing the size of the city, the number of trees, and the amount to see like ballpark how much the savings would be.
Yeah, and we can't do that unless we get an RFP out and actually get the
We
pricing.
can compare what they're paying or what their budget is for their tree trimming services compared to their number of trees.
You could. One of the things that would be required is the analysis with respect to the types of trees that we have, the diameter of those trees, the height of those trees, all that's specified in a contract. So we could explore that. We haven't delved into any of that because obviously we were waiting on council direction, but we could move forward if that's the desire of the council.
And that, again, would be within the scope of work for the RFP regarding being able to make those comparisons. And personally, I think that we can't make an educated decision unless we know all the facts. And one is, would it be cost effective to contract out? And for all those reasons being considered, and I think we did that a few years back, didn't we, Linda? Chris, did we do that a few years back? I might be thinking another department.
Good evening, Council. We actually had a very, very brief conversation about tree trimming and talking about prevailing wage versus what our salaries were. It was a very quick conversation here at Council many years ago. What you may be thinking of, Mayor Wright, is the evaluation that we've done with the Parks Department, where we have come to the council.
Yeah.
We've established what level of service are you looking for, because if there is a decision to go out to RFP, we want to be comparing apples to apples.
Right.
So we kind of did that evaluation of here's where we are. Do you want less for cost savings? Do you want more level of service? And I think some of the question too, as we've talked about it, is it a service level question? Is it a quality of service question? Is it a cost savings question? Because that also will drive kind of where we're headed in terms of what we would be looking at in the event the council did decide to look at contract services.
And we probably have more trees than most. I mean, because the 24,000 doesn't really, that's only what we know of, correct, Chris?
Correct. And if you recall, we had an asset management kind of survey done for all of our above ground assets throughout the city and the right of way through Cartograph 4 years ago at this point, and they did identify all of our city trees. We may actually have more trees than that now because as new developments have come in since then.
Right.
The other piece of the puzzle, and I think Chris mentioned it too, is that we are an older city. So our trees are 100 years old, and that's very different from blowing down a block of trees that is 20 feet tall.
Yeah.
That are new trees. So there are a lot of pieces of the puzzle, I think, that should you choose to move forward, we really do need to be consistent in what we're expecting and what our reality is, even in terms of those costs. So.
And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for all the facts, all the variables. So, moving forward with direction, on item 1, our recommendation 1, directing the city manager to develop an RFP for tree trimming services in order to determine feasibility and cost effectiveness. Item 2, meet and confer with bargaining groups and negotiate in good faith with one on matters that are within the scope of representation. So, we have a motion on that. A motion?
I just have a question on that. The meet and confer is to get the information to develop an RFP, or?
Primarily to give them the information, be transparent about the process, what they can expect, all those things, so that we're not, so that we're being transparent with the whole process.
And I think this is a good idea.
So are you making a motion?
I will make a motion that we go forward with an RFP and meet and confer on matters that are within the scope of the representation. I want to make an addendum to that, and to also in the meet and confer to ask staff for any recommendations that they have.
Right. Good idea.
Sometimes, I mean, being on the street and doing it over and over, they may say, hey, we can cut this, or we can change this, or maybe contract this to save us. You know, they may have ideas on that too. I mean, they know what they're doing. They do the actual work. It's easier than, yeah.
I'm not going to amend it.
You're not going to amend it?
I'm not going to amend their motions.
Oh,
No. A motion in the amendment? No.
and I accept that amendment. That's great.
Okay, so your motion includes her amendment?
Yeah, and I'll second. Sure. And second. There we go.
Should be
Okay.
a second.
Okay.
You can get in on it. You third it.
Pardon?
That person second.
We did.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
voting.
Please vote. And my yes still says from the last time, so I don't think it was cleared. There you go. Okay, and that is approved 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is number 15. This is information only on revised investment portfolio as of January 2019 and corrected investment portfolio report for July 2016. Finance Director Rocha? Oh, there you go.
She's running,
Okay.
am I on?
Yes. Saltman.
Yes. Yes, we're just trying to clarify some of the questions that were asked and to approve the January portfolio. There was oops, I'm getting out of order, sorry. Well, the questions about LAIF and the interest rate, correction to the July 2018 report, and the January investment portfolio report of this year, and the Bank of Hemet CDs. The first one is, why doesn't the LAIF interest match the interest listed within the report? That was a technical, it was incorrectly stated at 2.16%, which was the previous quarterly amount. And it was a technical error. The interest was entered first into the computer and then the rate. And the computer picked it up first, which was the last percentage there, which is the 216. The portfolio management was correct on the face page of it. It did have the 2.4%. So this was just entered in the received interest report, and it has been corrected. So I would like you to approve that for the January report. And the state treasurer's website has the information on how to calculate the quarterly earnings. There's a formula that is about 6 or 8 inches long, I think, how they do it. But Lorena here calculated it out, and it came out just right. And it can be found on the website of the treasurer's office. The investment report for July 2018 had a LAIF interest received incorrectly listed under withdrawals, and it should have been, it was just on the wrong line. It did go in as a deposit, so there was no, everything balanced. And it was just listed on the summary page on the wrong line, so that has been corrected. It's not a withdrawal because the money always goes into the LAIF account. We don't withdraw it out. The CD held with the Bank of Hemet in the amount of $494,000 will mature in September 2019. And will this CD be rolled over? No. It never gets just rolled over automatically. It gets reinvested. I go in and sit down with them and find out what what the rate's going to be. And we've always had an account there, so we generally keep a CD going with them. I think that answers the question. The CD with the Bank of Hemet in the amount of $494 exceeds the FDIC insurance of $250,000. Yes, it does. The city attorney is working with the staff. It has always been conforming with state law. So the city attorney is reviewing this, and we'll be looking to the council for direction on how the CD should be handled.
Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this item?
Yes, Sue Salvage would like to speak, and she has 6 minutes.
Okay. Savage?
You guys clean up pretty good. It was nice to see you all dressed up last night and enjoying yourself. And it explains, of course, why the scheduled meeting, council meeting from last night was moved to tonight, because that was a question. Oh, and good evening, Honorable Council. 3 meetings ago, the council voted to discuss at the next meeting the errors in the treasurer's report. The city attorney wrote down the items being questioned. It is appreciated that finally tonight, 3 meetings later, we are getting around to discussing the errors. Some of the taxpayer base is cheering city council for admitting to and correcting mistakes made by city treasurer Judith Oltmann. Others in the base are concerned there are additional errors. They question what other errors exist in the $90 million of Hemet taxpayer money. Only a forensic audit can determine the answer. Tonight, a question is made for a forensic audit of Hemet's investment portfolio. This request is based upon the following. Agenda item 15 states the LAIF interest rate was corrected to reflect the report presented by LAIF. This is a major concern. It suggests an inability to correctly read one report number and put it into the treasurer's report. This is sad. Item 15 goes on to state the LAIF interest is put back into the LAIF account. Doesn't California Government Code require interest earned going back to the public's general fund? Item 15 goes on to state, Sue Savage asked if the Bank of Hemet CD would be rolled over. This is misinformation. I never asked about a rollover. The YouTube video correctly reflects Councilman Brown seeking rollover information at 1606, at 1750, Councilman Percival, at 1811, Mayor Wright states she asks the rollover question monthly. Therefore, please correct the agenda minutes to reflect City Council is asking about the rollover, not Sue Savage. Continuing with agenda item 15, stating CDs are never rolled over. They are sent to the custodial bank. This is blatant misinformation. Investigating the Bank of Hemet CD reveals the following. It was originally deposited March the 6th, 2006, 13 years ago, presenting City Council with two problems. Problem number one, 13 years is a clear violation of the 5-year maximum term allowed by California Government Code. Problem number two, the initial CD clearly states a 3-year automatic renewal. Opened 13 years ago, so divide 13 years that we've had it by a 3-year renewal means it has been rolled over at least 4 times. Analyzing only 2 of the previous Treasury reports reveals the following. December the 10th, 2013, Council meeting report states the Bank of Hemet CD matured and was rolled over. The detailed report shows an uninterrupted Bank of Hemet CD. No custodial bank as claimed in tonight's agenda. November the 15th, 2016, Council meeting report clearly states Bank of Hemet CD matured and was rolled over for 5 years. The detailed report shows an uninterrupted Bank of Hemet CD. Again, no custodial bank as claimed in tonight's agenda. This is where it gets interesting. The reports reveal sometimes there is 1 CD, sometimes there are 2. This is a red flag. Sometimes the CD is earning 0.5, 1.6, or 0.4 interest, depending upon the report location. This is an even bigger red flag. Sometimes the CD maturity is 3 years, sometimes it is 5, as stated above. Also, a red flag. Agenda item 15 states the city attorney is working with staff to review the Bank of Hemet matter. At 10:56 in the YouTube video of February the 26th meeting, nearly a month ago, it records Attorney Vail having shared the Bank of Hemet collateral records provided to himself and City Finance Director Rocha. According to the video testimony, the city and the city attorney had already looked at the records over a month ago and had already shared those records with City Council. So what is taking so long? Agenda item 15 ends with analysis. City minutes show City Council approves the investment report each month. Each month, the City Treasurer writes on the cover page, I hereby certify this report accurately reflects all City of Hemet pooled investments and is in conformity with the investment policy of the City of Hemet. I believe the data presented tonight shows neither of the City Treasurer's printed statements are true or accurate. Therefore, it is appropriate to request a forensic audit of Hemet's investment portfolio.
Thank you, Sue.
Is that 6 minutes?
Yes.
Oh,
I think, wait, go ahead, you got a couple more seconds. Sorry, I saw the
that's
red.
all right, no problem.
I saw the red.
Me too. I see it too. All right. It's appropriate to request a forensic audit of Hemet's investment portfolio. So, a suggestion to cause the investment report to be presented. Oh, A suggestion to cause the Bank of Hemet CD be removed from the bank with interest paid to the
Okay,
date.
wrap it up, because you're.
I am.
Okay.
With interest paid, do you not want to hear it? You don't have to. Huh? It's up to you guys.
You got a sentence?
Okay, I do. That's what I'm saying. A summarizing is a suggestion to cause the Bank of Hemet CD to be removed from the bank with interest paid to the date of removal and without penalty. A suggestion to cause a forensic audit of the investment portfolio commencing 09/06/2010. Thank you. My name is Sue Savage. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on that item? Okay. Council? Any comments?
Oh, I have a motion when you are ready for a motion. So I'll wait and see if anybody else wants to talk. Let me make a motion first, then you can talk.
Sure.
All right, I move that we receive and file the 2 corrected reports from our elected city treasurer, who is in charge of our investment decisions, and a receive and file is us accepting her report and filing it, not giving approval.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Michael, second that.
I'll second that.
Is there any more discussion? I think.
Yes.
Okay. So that's why I asked.
Yes. Yes. 'Cause I think it really needs to be very clear that a receive and file and an approval are 2 different things. And none of us as elected officials sitting here can approve an investment report that has to go to an auditor at the end of the year. So, and this is just discussion because I agree with this, but in the process of doing this, and maybe that's we'll have to have legal weigh in on this, that our agenda structure itself needs to be changed to be more in line with how regional boards receive and file these things, because it's not included in a consent calendar. It
Right.
is strictly as a receive and file, and bingo. We've received it, we've filed it, and it goes to audit. We are not approving anything that is in this report.
And I failed actually to come back to Ms. Altman and see if she had any comments based on anything that was stated tonight.
Well, the Bank of Hemet CD has always been, the city has had a CD with the Bank of Hemet since way before I was here. They've always had one, or 2. There were 2 because it was RDA. You could have one each. And for years we had 2 of them, just like all our other ones. CDs are different than the negotiable CDs, and that was a mistake on my part. For the negotiable CDs automatically are done. They just go back into the custodial bank. Bank CDs are different. You deal with the bank themselves. But I never let anything automatically roll over. It's reinvested, perhaps, which it's a matter of semantics. But it's always been safe. It's always been good. And it does mature in about 5.5 months. So my thoughts are just let it go to maturity, and we can renegotiate from there.
Okay, thanks, Judy. So I have a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion, please vote. And that would be on items A, B, and C. Correct?
Nope. 1 and 2. Receive and file revised.
Got it.
And receive
Okay.
and file corrected.
Okay, so we're voting on items 1 and 2. Please vote. And that is approved by 0. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, and as
We have direction, we must provide direction on item C.
item C.
Right.
I'm going to do that.
And there's no motion, there's just simply direction.
Okay. Okay, well, this was discussed at the last Investment Oversight Committee, and we did take a vote during that session to provide direction to the city treasurer to move the money out of the Bank of Hemet. And we did that on a 4-1 vote. So the direction from the Investment Oversight Committee, to put it on the record of council, was to move the money from the Bank of Hemet and then invest it in something else.
Okay,
So how do we
And
handle
to be
that?
a little bit more clear,